Hey everyone, my name is Chelsea. Welcome to Little Mountain Ranch. Welcome to my garden. I'm really happy to have you here with me today. Today is a day that I have been looking forward to for months now, and that is doing my first zucchini and my first pickling cucumber harvest. If you have been with me since we planted out this garden a couple of months ago, you know it has been a little bit of a rocky ride, particularly when it comes to the heat-loving plants like the cucumbers and the zucchini. Around the 11th of June, we had a good frost come through and it killed a lot of my pickling cucumbers. So I ended up having to replant a lot of them at that point, and then it stayed cool for quite a while. So I really wasn't sure if we would get pickling cucumbers at all. But then the weather changed. We had a heat wave that managed to get everything going really quickly. So while things are a little bit later than they would normally be, they do seem to be catching up now at this point. Let's get down there and see what we have to work with today, and then I'll share with you my process for making pickles. We'll probably do some dill pickles today, and depending on the size of some of the cucumbers that we find down there, we may do a small batch of sweet pickles as well. You can see lots of zucchini plants down here, so we're also going to be making some zucchini relish. Well, we're going to start the process today and finish it up tomorrow morning. I had a couple of people ask whether this was powdery mildew on these leaves. No, it isn't. This is just the variegation in these leaves. This one is called Stardust. Looks a little like stardust on these leaves, and I think they're absolutely beautiful. This one, look at those beautiful leaves. This one is a Romanesco, and it grows the most beautiful zucchini. Look at that. We also have some cue ball squash here. So these are a hybrid. I'm not sure what they're hybridized between, but from what I have heard, they are very similar to a zucchini in flavor, a little bit more buttery and nutty flavored as far as I have read. So we're going to pick some of these two and use them in our zucchini relish and fry some of those up for lunch. They are very prolific, so I think for most gardeners, one plant would be sufficient. Okay, let's take a peek in here. We got one there we can harvest. We have lots of plants to go through here. Harvesting pickling cucumbers is like a treasure hunt, and you really do need to fold all the leaves back in order to make sure that you get them all. And inevitably I will end up missing a few. Put in even a week or two after all the other ones that I had planted up, because they were little plants that had been damaged by the frost that I thought might recover. They did not, so I pulled them out and planted these plants. So I didn't expect there to be many ready cucumbers down on this end. I think this is going to be a pretty small harvest of pickling cucumbers. I don't see a ton ready in here. These are what I would consider to be the perfect size for both dill pickles and for sweet pickles. You can let them go a little bit bigger with the sweet pickles, but these definitely for dills, this is as big as you want them to get if you want crispy pickles. One of the best tips that I can give you for getting crispy pickles, which is I think most home canners' biggest complaint about making your own pickles, is that they're never crispy, is to pick them each and every morning, preferably before the day starts getting hot, and getting them into jars pretty much right away. So one of the things that I do is make a batch of brine, which we're going to do when we go back inside. And even if I only have a couple jars to can, I'll just use my steam canner and make a batch of pickles every morning. And that works really well for getting nice, crispy pickles. Most of the ones that I planted, that I started from seed, they're called homemade pickles is the variety. The ones that I bought from the nursery after I lost a lot of my own were just called pickling cucumbers. So I'm not sure what variety they are, but they're growing nicely. So we're definitely another few days away from where we're going to get a good amount, but I'm glad I'm out here picking anyway, because there are some that are borderlining on too big. The leaves of pickling cucumbers can be a little bit irritating to the skin, so it's not a bad idea when you're harvesting, especially if you have sensitive skin, to wear some kind of gloves or arm protection. for when you're putting your hand in the plant, because they are a little bit prickly, and the cucumbers themselves can be prickly too. So these guys here, this is what I would consider too big for making dill pickles, and I would use these for a sweet pickle. I do hope we get another bit of heat to just push these along a little bit more. There's lots of little baby pickles on here, but these guys really do love some heat. If we keep getting the cool nighttime temperatures we've been getting the last couple of days, we got down to 8 degrees Celsius last night, I may pull out my row covers to put on these guys at night. Well, that was definitely a little bit lackluster, but that's okay. We can still get a couple jars out of that. Now for the beautiful zucchinis. Okay, so these guys, from what I've read, are best to be picked when they are about 3 to 4 inches. So this is probably as big as you'd want to let them go. All that happens, they're still totally edible, but you just end up having to clean out the seeds on the inside so they're not super watery. We'll definitely have enough to get some relish going. Not bad. Look, these are our first zinnia blossoms of the year. So we're going to grab ourselves some dill. So let's grab a few flowers and a few leaves. Some little garlic to go in there too. About a week ago, we tried some of the fennel, and we all really liked it, which I was surprised because I'm not a huge fan of black licorice flavor, but we did like it. It was good. So I did come through here and pick out the mint that was taking over this bed. Everything's looking much happier now. Sage is looking great. All right, let's head up to the house and start getting this stuff processed. Okay, we are inside. I have washed our pickling cucumbers here, and I have decided to make a half gallon of refrigerator pickles since I don't really have enough to warrant running the pressure canner through, or the steam canner through. Usually I like to have at least 3 or 4 quarts to run that through. So we're going to do that. I have my zucchini and my cue ball squash in the sink. They're all washed up, and all we're going to do with that is run that through the food processor and get it all shredded so that we can add some salt to it. And we're actually going to leave that overnight so that we can pull as much of the water out of that as possible, but we'll get to that in a second. In order to make a very simple brine that can be used for either the refrigerator pickles or to can them, we just want a 1-to-1 ratio of vinegar to water. And I like to use a mix of apple cider vinegar and regular white vinegar. So what I'm going to do here is, because I have just about a full jug here, but not quite, is I'm actually just going to top it off with my apple cider vinegar. And then this just makes measuring really easy, because then I can just fill this up with water. And then we usually add around 4 teaspoons of salt to every cup of vinegar. Oh, look at that. Exactly the right amount. So I have a big stock pot here. So now I'm just going to fill this up with water and dump that into. All right, and here we go. So all I'll do with the leftover of this is I'll put it in a gallon jar in the fridge. So the salt itself is for flavoring, not so much for preservation. The vinegar is what's going to preserve them. So you can basically add the amount of salt you want for the kind of flavor that you like. But like I said, the standard measurement is around 4 teaspoons to every cup. So just make sure whatever salt you use is not iodized. Then we're going to bring this over to the stove and get that salt dissolved. It's completely up to you, but I like to add just a little bit of sugar to my brine as well. And now we are going to take some of our dill. And this dill is all washed as well. And we're going to put it in our jar. I learned a few years ago, and I don't know for sure if it works or not, is to cut off the blossom end of your cucumber. So just a little bit, like so. Apparently there's an enzyme in that end that can cause a softening of your pickles. And if you cut it off, that doesn't happen. Or so I've been told. So I do it anyway, because why not? Anything I can do to encourage crispier pickles, I do. Adding a grape leaf or a horseradish leaf, because they have tannins in them, and tannins can help with crispiness as well, you can also do. Speaking of which, we have our fermented garlic scapes there that we can open up and give them a try, because I do believe they are ready to go into the fridge. Something else I could do with a small batch like this is make some fermented pickles, which I will probably do a few batches of those throughout the season. Now, in order to fit these bigger ones, I'm going to cut them up. So we do want to make sure that we have enough room that we can cover our pickles up with the brine. There we go. Okay, let's try our garlic scapes. So the reason I thought of these garlic scapes is because I did use a horseradish leaf in the top of them to hold them down. This works really, really well, either a horseradish leaf, or if you're using doing sauerkraut, you can use cabbage leaf on the top, and you just cut it the size of your opening, and then that holds all the veggies down below. Yum. Super crispy too. Those could have used a little bit more dill in those ones. And put that into the fridge. And these couple extra bigger pickles that we have, we're actually just going to throw that right into our relish. So we'll just shred those up with our zucchini. Okay, we have our brine. So now we're just going to top off our jar with our brine. And then you want these to sit in the fridge for at least a week. 2 is better, but at least a week. And into the fridge. Don't those look good? We'll throw our brine into a jar, and we'll make more pickles again later on in the week, and I'll make sure that when we're canning pickles, I show you how I do that. Okay friends, we are on to day 2 of this project. So yesterday we ran all of our zucchini through our food processor and then added some salt to it, and we actually put it outside because it was cool enough last night. But if it's not cool where you are, then do put it in the refrigerator overnight. And now we are going to get rid of all of the liquid, or as much of the liquid as we can in this. I'll show you how much comes out. It is a lot. And I have some onions here that are chopped up, and I wanted to show you my food processor because it has this really awesome attachment for it. This is the KitchenAid food processor, but it has a chopping attachment for it. Isn't that fantastic? And it chops everything into these perfect sized little cubes, which is fantastic for doing large batches, small batches too, but when I'm doing large batches of salsa, running everything through here, or in this case, chopping all of the peppers and the onions up for the zucchini relish. Just absolutely fantastic. So we also have some peppers chopped up here as well. And I'm not sure how much I'm going to need of each ingredient until I measure out the amount of zucchini that we have here. So this job can be a little bit difficult on the hands because, especially if you've had yours in the refrigerator overnight, it is going to be very cold. So putting on some thick latex gloves or rubber gloves can be a really good idea just to protect your hands from the cold. Mine was just sitting outside, so it's not too cold. So I think bare hands will be just fine. Okay, so we're gonna dump out all of our liquid. Oh my goodness. There we go. The zucchini were the perfect size. They hardly had any seeds in them, but those cue ball were a little bit large. So we did remove the seeds from the inside of those. So now we're gonna take our zucchini and we're gonna squeeze as much of that liquid out of there as we possibly can. Yeah, would you be able to give me a hand to squeeze out this zucchini? I'm gonna get down to come help and squeeze out this zucchini because it's hard on my hands. You're getting a lot more liquid out than I am. Okay, so I'm gonna measure out my zucchini here. I don't really think I have that many more than 12 cups, but I guess we'll see. So we have about 17 or so cups of our zucchini here. So I'm gonna add 6 cups of chopped onion. And we have 4 chopped peppers. Look at how beautiful this looks already. So now we gotta get a large pot. So we have a large stock pot here. So for the 12 cups of zucchini, this calls for 6 cups of sugar. So it's quite a lot of sugar, but just remember this is a condiment. So it's not like we're eating a ton of it at once. So I am going to link the recipe down below in the show notes for this. And then you can adjust it according to however much zucchini that you have. So we're gonna do some celery. Oops, oh shoot, I just broke the lid right off that. Little bit of turmeric, and then a little bit of ground nutmeg. My goodness, that smells so good. I'll put this on the stove. I have pulled out my Presto electric pressure canner because in my last video I was running through my first batch of pressure canned food through the canner, and I commented that I really wish, my only complaint with it was that I wish that it had a beep notification between each step. And there were multiple comments, many comments of people saying that there is a beep between each step, but it's quite quiet. So it's not surprising that I didn't hear it because normally my house is fairly noisy, active place, and I'm also in and out of the kitchen all the time. So it's possible that I just missed it. So I thought we would run it through today, and I will stay in the kitchen and pay attention to see if there's a beep. Several people did comment saying that it was quite quiet, and that Presto could improve it by making the beep a little bit louder. But we shall see today whether mine just doesn't have a beep at all, or if I just missed out on it last time, which is probably what happened. So we're also gonna add a little bit of black pepper. This recipe does call for cornstarch as the thickening agent, and cornstarch is not recommended to use in canning. Something like Sure Gel or Clear Gel is recommended because it's specifically formulated for canning. The concern with cornstarch is that because it can be a little bit lumpy, that potentially the heat can't penetrate in through the product. Over the last 25 years or so of making zucchini relish, I have probably only actually added a thickener to it maybe a couple of times, and so it works perfectly fine without it. It's just a little bit more runny. So when you open up the jar, I just use a fork to take it out rather than a spoon if I'm going to put it on something like a hamburger so that the bun doesn't go soggy. But it's fine. So we're going to add, take our spoon out of there, our peppers. So mix that in. So it's going to look like when you add your vinegar and your sugar that you don't have nearly enough brine for this, but because there's still a lot of water left in the zucchini, plus there's the water in the onions and in the peppers, once you've cooked it down for the 30 minutes that we're going to need to cook it for, there's more than enough liquid in it. Add the zucchini and the rest of the peppers and onions that got lost in the zucchini. You can see already how much liquid is coming out of there, so there'll be more than enough when we're done. Okay, so we have our relish here that's been cooking for 30 minutes, and I have my jars that have warmed in the pressure canner over here, and then I also have some jars that I put in the steam canner right over there. So I just heated those jars up. Because I am using a very hot product here, I want to make sure that my jars are hot so that they do not crack. All right, let's fill our jars. I'm going to leave a 3/4 to an inch of headspace. So the purpose of the turmeric is mostly to just give it this beautiful yellow color, but it doesn't do much to the flavor of it. You can omit it if you want to. Oh, that's warm, but it is good. If you have not heard my zucchini relish story before, then prepare yourself for a good chuckle. If you've heard it before, bear with me, because I tell it every year when I make zucchini relish here on my channel, because it makes me think of it every time, and I think it's so funny. So back when I was in my early 20s, I was probably 22, 23, something like that. I was just getting into canning independently. I had grown up canning with my mom my entire life, but I was getting into making my own canned goods. And my best friend at the time, her grandma, had given her a recipe for zucchini relish, and she shared it with me, and I was really excited about it. So I made it. We thought it was absolutely delicious, the best relish we'd ever had. Very similar to this particular recipe that I'm doing here. Most zucchini relish recipes are pretty much the same. So anyway, I canned a whole bunch of other things that year, experimented with learning how to make jelly, learning how to make salsa, all this stuff. And someone suggested that I enter the fall fair, which I did. And I was quite proud of myself. I entered, I think, 6 jars of preserves to the fall fair. I didn't actually go to the fall fair. I did not for a second think that I would win anything, but I did. I actually won first place for my zucchini relish, and I won, I think, second place for my, I think it was like a quince jelly or something like that, and a few other things I can't remember, but I won prizes on everything that I had entered, and I was ecstatically proud of myself. So I called my best friend up and I said, guess what? I won first place for the zucchini relish, and then, you know, whatever the other prizes were. And she just quietly said, I know. And I said, really? How do you know? And she said, because my grandma also entered the fall fair. So you know where this is going, right? So she says, my grandma also entered the fall fair, and she entered her zucchini relish into the fall fair too. And she was not happy with the fact that you won zucchini relish with her recipe. And it honestly, she was quite upset. And I had no idea about etiquette back then as far as asking people to use their recipes or anything like that. Like, I did not have a clue. And I was absolutely crushed and devastated. I never did enter a fall fair again after that. And it took me a while to actually talk to my friend's grandma, and I apologized profusely. She was very gracious. I'm sure I wasn't supposed to know that she was upset about it. And she was very gracious and congratulated me and all of that. But needless to say, I never did enter a fall fair competition again after that. And I think about it every time I make zucchini relish. It just gives me a little chuckle. So one thing I do try to do here on my channel is to make sure that I credit or share the link to whatever recipe it is that I am using, just so that never happens again. Okay, I am doing an extra good job at getting these jars cleaned off because there's quite a lot of sugar in this recipe, and they are sticky. So there we go. So we have our washed lids over here. And we're just going to add our lids on. So we have a rough tally so far as the amount of jars that I have canned this year so far, and we're nearing 800 jars, which is fantastic. My goal is always around 1,000 to 1,200, kind of in that range. So we will definitely achieve that this year because we haven't even started canning tomatoes yet. Okay, so we're gonna put our jars in here. We'll be able to fill both of these canners. So like I said, I'm using my steam canner as well. I have never met anybody who doesn't like this relish, so it's a really great one to make as gifts as well, because if people like relish, they always love this stuff. So we're gonna process these for 30 minutes. I'll be back with you when we're finished. Let me show you what the relish looks like when it is all done. Isn't that beautiful with the little red flecks in it? And it's so delicious, my friends. So I ended up with 15 pints and 1 quart of the relish. I'll probably do another batch before the season is over. And with the rest of the zucchini, we will grate it and freeze dry it or put it in the freezer, because I primarily like to use my zucchini in breads. I throw it in soup. I throw it in smoothies even. If you have any recipes that you think that I might like to try, you can feel free to email those to me. That's kind of the best place to share recipes with me, because if they're in the comment section, I end up losing track of them and they're hard to save that way. But I would be really open to trying other zucchini recipes over the next couple of months, because goodness knows I'm going to have a lot of zucchini. I hope that you all enjoyed today's video, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.